Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to the podcast. And I'm so happy for you to get to know today Dr. Carlos Garcia. Welcome, Carlos.
Thank you. Thank you, Gordon. It's such a pleasure to be here with you today.
Yes, and so Carlos is in Tampa, Florida.
Tampa Counseling and Wellness.
Yes, perfect. Yeah, tell a little bit more about yourself and how you've landed where you've landed.
Yeah, sure. So I'll give you the quick part of the story. So actually, after high school, I was in the military for about 6 years, serving in the United States Marine Corps, and then I actually transitioned into work as a fireman and paramedic for about another six, almost 7 years, before I decided to go back to school and get my doctorate degree in psychology. So it's always been a passion of mine. I also struggled a lot with my own mental health in my 20s and 30s. So that was sort of the big push. I saw the ways that therapy could have such a profound impact in shifting someone's life, and sort of knew from that point on that that's what I wanted to do with my life. So coming out of my graduate program, I actually went and did a little bit of consulting work in corporate America, and then came back to Tampa in 2017, got my license, and then a couple years after that started my own practice. So we now have a small practice here in Tampa with several other clinicians that work with me, and we have an amazing team, and we provide just like the just really best and most amazing services to our community in mental health and wellness.
Oh, it's awesome. And thank you for your service on just
Thank
both,
you.
to our country and then just in in the first responder
So
arena.
much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm guessing like most of us that are in private practice, the learning curve on how to run a practice was a pretty big one because I know as people have heard from me, we get a lot of great clinical training and learn that whole side of things, but running the business side of a practice is a totally different thing.
Yeah, it's sort of, you're just like taking the hits and learning as you go, right?
Hmm.
It has felt at times like you're just kind of walking in the dark with your hands
Hmm.
out in front of you to kind of figure it out. I think there's a lot of beautiful learning that happens in that way, Gordon, that we may not get in a classroom, for example, if we were
Hmm.
taking sort of a business course. I'm keenly aware of that because just here recently, I was asked to speak for a class over here in at the University of South Florida for folks that were about to graduate with their doctorate in
Hmm.
business. And it was profound to see how I had this sort of level of experience and knowledge that was derived from walking through the dark, from hitting the bumps on the road,
Right.
that some of these folks hadn't even been introduced to yet. So I think there's a really cool piece to that. But yeah, it's also a challenge. It's also a challenge because you're asked to sometimes learn, whether it's, how to create budgets, or how to do marketing, or how to
Hmm.
network, things that you haven't maybe had to explore in the past. So yeah, there's such a growth that, comes from that's beautiful. I got really lucky, Gordon, because of my veteran status here locally. We have the MacDill Air Force Base, so there's a
Hmm.
lot of veterans in our community. And one of the programs that was available for veterans was a sort of 3-month course for veteran entrepreneurs. So I got to
Wow.
come in and meet with them once a week and kind of learn a few things about how to develop a business, scale a business. And so that was really, really helpful. Also have this really, really amazing facility that is in downtown. It's called the Entrepreneur Collaborative Center. And
Hmm.
so they have a lot of free resources there that are funded by the county. If you wanted to take a class on sales, if you wanted to take a class on, how to create a business plan, they have those things. So the researchers were out there. It was really a matter of going out there and, how much of that did I want to learn, and then be able to come back and implement in my own practice and my own business.
Right, right. Yeah. So what were some of the things that I'm trying to think how the best way to ask this question? What were some of the things that you felt like were, I guess, pivotal in helping you grow your practice and just kind of this is finally on the right track kind of thing.
Yeah, God, there's so many.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the one that is sticking out for me the most, and I don't know if a lot of other folks experience a challenge around this, but around budgets and finance. I've never been a
Hmm.
numbers person, and so Even in the first couple of years of my practice, am I tracking the right data? Am I looking at the numbers correctly? And so there was a big learning curve there for me. And
Mm,
just one of those places where I've been challenged throughout, right?
mhm,
Because, you know, you want to get out ahead of that stuff early on in the practice, right? Before you're making mistakes that are costing you deep in the pocket. And so if I had any advice for anyone out there, if that's a place where you feel challenged, maybe take some classes on or some courses on QuickBooks or budgeting or whatever it is. That's really going to help you in a really, really powerful way in the long run. Because here we are, and we're still kind of looking at like, what's the best way to track all of the data, the numbers that we need
yeah.
to track, not just from a revenue perspective, but incoming calls and where are those calls coming from, and are we, are we converting? I hate using terms like that,
Mhm,
therapy space, but like, are we
mhm,
converting the calls that are coming in? How long are they staying? And really more from a perspective of like, how can we use that data to better our services,
mhm,
to be better for our clients and for our community? So all of that is really, really important. And if you're not a numbers person, well, make sure that early on you bring someone on in your team that is,
right,
yeah.
right. Yeah, yeah, that's something that people hear from me all the time is the importance of knowing your numbers.
Yes,
And just but like you said, is that's a very broad term, knowing your numbers, but what numbers are we looking at? And that kind of thing. And you mentioned some really good things to think about is, what one of the things that I think a lot of people don't think about is just client retention and making sure that people are staying and completing their therapy and that sort of thing. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. One of the things that I chose to do at my practice, Gordon, and I'm kind of talking from my like owner hat here, but also this the therapeutic, compassionate part of me. I I felt very strongly. Let me just back up here a minute.
Mhm.
I think that when our field started to adopt the medical model, there was some really great shifts, and then some shifts that impacted our field in a pretty negative way. For me, I'm not a big believer in the fact, these sort of manualized. I know there's a lot of value in that, but for me, it's about like the human sitting across from me and the healing that they need to do, less
Mhm.
about how many sessions do I have to give you and what prescriptive treatment do I need to give you,
All right.
right? And so for me, it was very important that if I was going to hire staff to work at my practice, that I wanted to have what I call sort of brand alignment, right? Are the therapists that also work here work sort of in the ways that I do with that model of belief that we're not just going to do a quick fix, that this isn't sort of solution focused therapy, although that has its place and its value, that we're really here to provide a different service. And that's, we want to get you to the root of your hurt and pain and whatever's showing up for you so we can
Mhm.
help you heal and move through that. So I decided to hire a lot of interns and postdocs that were going to work under me for a period of time. And that was sort of my way of knowing that the services we were going to have here were going to be consistent. So in that is coming back to your point, the client retention. I think when clients know that they're there to do deeper work and that there isn't some set amount of sessions that's going to relieve their suffering, if you will,
Mm,
they're sort of in it for the long haul. I think that that's a part of the messaging that contributes to a client that stays longer, is that first conversation up front about like, what are we really doing here? I mean, yeah, I'm happy to give you some strategies and techniques to fix the problem that's going on right now, but right, this has a deeper root to it, and I invite you and encourage you, what if we were to take a look at that and show you not only how to heal, but how to develop some different coping strategies and some different ways of being in the world, so that later on down the road, if this were to ever arise again, you
mhm.
know what you have to do, right? And you feel confident in your ability to do that. So for me, that's a big piece that goes into client retention.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. And unfortunately, I think part of the whole medical model of mental health has been driven by insurance. And I don't know whether you accept insurance in your practice or not, but I know for my practice, that's something that we do. And that's something to be, again, on the business side of things, of being able to be aware of, okay, insurance rates and what you can collect per session and all of those kinds of things, and
Yeah,
how it
yeah,
fits in. But I totally agree with you, is
yeah.
that therapy should be driven by what the client needs or what the patient needs, rather than what some chart says they need.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree. And, I know that people fall sort of everywhere along the spectrum. My experience has been not only through my own therapy as a patient, but now as a clinician, is that when I've sort of given or allowed the space for my clients to explore, whether it's previous attachments, from this sort of psychodynamic lens, object relations, what are the impacts of those early experiences in our lives that mold the attitudes that we then carry about ourselves and others in the world. I've noticed that inevitably where we arise is that anxiety decreases, the depression decreases, the thing that they're coming in to work on is you know again either healed or moved through it in a very powerful way. And because that's been the brunt of my experience, is how I've wanted to continue to work. Now, as a business owner, that incurs a huge challenge, because a lot of the marketing that we have to do and the advertising it's sort of on us. It's not given over to the insurance companies. And so that's a real challenge for anybody that's trying to run a practice that's self-pay. But something that when I sit with, having more clients and maybe a higher revenue, or continuing to do this work in a way that feels truly aligned and for the clients,
Mhm.
um, I just keep coming back to, well, we're going to stay self-pay and do what we got to do to make
Right.
ends meet in other ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that was a decision that was a hard one for me to make in my practice, is,
Yeah.
because obviously self-pay is easier. There's less headaches and stuff. But then you think about, in parallel to that are the needs of your clients, and just looking at the demographics of my area, where we're,
Yeah.
here in an Appalachian culture, surrounded by a large rural area, with the socioeconomics is much different than other parts of the country. And so,
Of course.
yeah,
All of
it's,
those things need to be considered.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
sure does. Sure does. Well, the other thing that you mentioned a little bit ago, and I think this is something for people to think about, is as you grew your group practice, the recruiting of therapists and how you went about that. And this is something that I think is becoming more and more a way to think about it, is bringing those new folks in, and bringing them up, so to speak, and in your ways of doing things.
Yeah, we've navigated this multiple different ways. We've, have brought on at times people that are already licensed. We've had good and bad experiences, bringing in, whether it's sort of interns or postdocs, or at a student practicum level, that, then they kind of move through the process. And, there's been positive and not so great experiences there as well. What I can say is, yeah, it's a process, right? We've tried bringing people
Hmm.
off from doing an advertisement or a post on Indeed, sometimes on social media. We have several also partners in the community and other universities in the area, or in Florida or outside, who we've developed good relationships with, who are always willing to send us, students and interns. So there's lots of different ways to make that happen. I think where the focus needs to be is in the sort of interview process. And what I mean by that, Gordon, is an interview process that allows either you as the owner, or as the group, or as the team, to identify individuals that are aligned to the vision of the organization and the method in which we work,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
For example, a small example would be, we meet every 2 weeks as a team for our supervision slash consultation meeting, right? We discuss cases, right? And so I've experienced at times, most of my team, if we had to label it, are psychodynamic, they're integrative, right? They're going to focus on relationships, they're interpersonal, attachment based. And we've had folks that are very solution focused, kind of CBT, and you can tell
Mhm.
that they just don't feel like comfortable, or they feel like this isn't the space for them, right? Like it's very nuanced, but you can
Mhm.
sense it.
Mhm.
So part of what that meant for us is I don't just want to be the only person interviewing this person. I want my administrative team to interview them. I have two young females that work for us in our administrative team, both part time. They're looking to get their degrees later on, but I have such a deep trust in them because they're so passionate about what we're doing here at Tampa Counseling and Wellness. And so their opinion to me matters just as much as the opinion of anyone else. We also have the person interview with one of our sort of somebody that just finished their practicum or their internship so that they can ask questions about what that process was like for them.
Mhm.
And then I'll have them sort of interview with me and maybe another clinician. So all of those touch points allow us to see, like, is this somebody that's going to be a good fit here,
Mhm.
not only from a clinical perspective, but for our team, right? Is this somebody we
Mhm.
want to be around weekly? Is this, and so it's been a really great tool for us, I think.
Mhm.
And you still get some that kind of slip through the cracks. I mean, people always putting their best foot forward, but it,
Mhm.
it really gives you a good feel for the person you're bringing on, and that's what's truly helped us bring the most aligned folks to our organization.
Right,
Yeah,
right. I love that process, and I do a similar thing in hiring when I'm bringing people on. Is
yeah,
you know I want to get kind of a second opinion or other eyes on it of being able to pick up on things that I might not see or be biased to or that kind of thing.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I think that the bigger sort of lesson in all of that, Gordon, has been for me knowing that I don't always have the best idea on the team. I
Hmm.
don't always have the
Hmm.
best way of doing things. And that was something that, when you're a solopreneur like myself, and someone that comes from this model of like take charge, right? Like that's what the Marine Corps taught me: take charge and you lead the
Hmm.
way. I
Hmm.
had to really, like, delegating was a real challenge at the
Sure.
beginning. Learning
Hmm.
that other people had ideas that sometimes were better than mine, or ways of doing things that were much better. So I
Hmm.
think the bigger lesson there is, like, sometimes you got to get out of your own way and let people, give them the confidence to take charge and do things, because sometimes that is where the value really comes.
Right, right. And to add to that, I think in delegating, and that's been been a learning curve for me as well, because, like you, like most of us that go into private practice, we have a sense of ambition, and the good work ethic and all of those kinds of things. And we have, okay, this is the way I want to do it. And the thing about it is if you do it all, then you will never grow.
Exactly.
You absolutely have to have the ability to delegate and outsource to have any sort of growth. And I think recognizing too that I might delegate this to someone and know they're not going to do it exactly the way I would do it,
Right.
but they're going to do it in their way and it's going to be just as successful.
Yeah. Yeah. It is really truly about surrendering in that process sometimes. And I think another thing that goes along with that, Gordon, is, for me with my staff, it's always been a conversation that I house right up front about, this is our practice,
Hmm.
right? So the
Hmm.
second that I hired someone new on the practice several years ago, because I was on my own for the first couple of years, I went into the website and changed all of the my and I to we and our. And so even when young practicum students or interns are coming here, I tell them, this might just be the place where you come and train for a couple of years, or you can make this your home.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that, when I tell them that, is like, bring your creativity, bring your passion, make this a place that's yours as well. Bring in new services, right? Find where we can grow all together as a team in a way that we could all benefit, right?
Hmm.
And so I think when you plant that seed early on in someone that's still in a sort of supervised role, they really take ownership of their time here. They develop a deeper sense of confidence of like, oh yeah, my opinions and my thoughts and the things that I bring to the table are really acknowledged here and sometimes implemented. And so that really helps the cohesion of our team as well.
Right, right. Yeah. One of the things, I don't remember where I heard it, but I remember just thinking about, and it was around team building and that sort of thing. But, people don't necessarily people don't work for a paycheck. They work for a sense of purpose and feel like they're contributing in some way. And
Yeah.
so the more that you can do, just like you mentioned, Carlos, in giving people ownership and giving them a stake in it, they're going to be happier, you're going to be happier, and it's going to be a much more successful practice.
Yeah, and all of that is the sort of trickle effect, the ripple outward. Because when you have therapists that are engaged, when you have therapists that don't feel burnt out, when you have therapists that come to work and want to be here, the level and quality of their work directly relates. And so now you have these like amazing therapists just really showing up for their clients in this really powerful, beautiful way. And like I get emotional about it, but often in these team meetings, I'm hearing these therapists and their work with their clients, and it's so like I'm moved to tears because it's so beautiful, the
Mm-hmm.
work that's happening, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
it's beautiful to see that it's a ripple outward, right? And these clients are then going out there and right, they're better for their families and in their world, and so
Yeah.
it really is just amazing to see.
Yeah, it is. And it's, I've always said it is that this work that we do is very noble. And I would say, just drawing on kind of my own faith tradition, really kind of holy, sacred work as well. Not to push any sort of religious agenda or anything, but that, it's people come and hand to us some of the heaviest things in their lives, and to have someone there to listen and to hear it in a non-judgmental, affirming kind of way. I think that's where healing resides. Yeah.
That's it, Gordon.
Hmm.
That's it. I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
That really speaks to me, my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just reflecting here recently on a client that just came in and was finally at that point where they shared something that they had been holding sort of deep agony and shame around for years and years and
Hmm.
years and hadn't told anyone.
Hmm.
And I just sat there in like in an awe, and again, this is not like almost like a spiritual awe, like wow, to be graced
Hmm.
with the honor that another human being has given me, the trust that they have given me in that moment was
Hmm.
like I didn't even need any other kind of payment or paycheck. Like to be sort of given that, it was such an honor. And so I think the
Hmm.
word sacred is very appropriate here.
Hmm.
That doesn't happen in too many other spaces in our lives.
Right.
Right?
Right.
I was just sharing with one of my young clinicians who was feeling really positive about some work that he's done with a client, and I sort of just said, like, if nothing else, right, we don't have to get tripped up in what am I doing with this client, which way are we moving, what's the treatment plan. It's just sitting back and recognizing that you are a safe and loving and compassionate place from which they can go into the places in them where they hurt or have shame, to find the healing, to do the work, right, in our
Hmm.
presence, in a
Right.
loving presence. And like if you
Uh-oh.
do nothing else,
Hmm.
you've done it all.
Yeah.
In
You're exactly right. That is the key. I think that's the key to therapy is just creating that safe space and being able to just kind of take in and hear the pain that people are going through, and them knowing that it's okay. Yeah.
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 And you know what? Here we are, right?
Yeah.
And nothing changes. And I still
Yeah.
think you're an amazing human being, and really
Hmm.
that space. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, Gordon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Carlos, this is great stuff, and I know we could probably talk all day about these
Probably.
things that we're passionate about. But
Sure.
any parting thoughts that you have and on all of this?
Yeah, I just, this last conversation that we were just having, it feels like that's kind of where we always arrive, whether it's,
Hmm.
y- you know, as therapists or, sometimes I've noticed that healing happens in a lot of different places. Sometimes it happens on a yoga mat, sometimes it happens in meditation, sometimes it happens, doing some somatic work, sometimes it happens in the therapy office, sometimes it happens with a pastor. I think that it's right. Like, what are we embodying as those presents in the life of others, right? If we can
Hmm.
embody love and compassion and knowing that we're sort of all in this together, then God, we can all help to heal each other just through our own work on ourselves sometimes.
Hmm.
And so if we can keep doing that, then we can start to shift the way that many of us show up in the world. And what can that mean for us as society and as as a world?
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, that's sort of my parting thought. Let's continue to do the work on ourselves so that we can be
Hmm.
beautiful vehicles for others to do their
Yeah.
work.
Because it's important work. It really
Yeah,
is. Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, Carlos, thanks again for being on the podcast. Tell folks real quickly how they can get a hold of you and
Sure.
get in touch if they'd like to.
They can find me on tampacounselingandwellness.com. Those are also on Facebook and on Instagram. They can find me at Dr. Carlos A. Garcia on Instagram. I post a lot of content about, just life and the ups and downs of life and a lot of beautiful things there. And here now I just launched a new website in 2025, which is drcarlos.com. And that's, if people want to connect with me there, they can find my book on there, and also a lot of my speaking stuff is on there as well.
Awesome. Thanks again, Carlos, and I'm sure we'll be in touch again.